Yes, the motion carries. The agenda is adopted. On item number 6, the treasurer's report.
I just wanted to note to everyone that we did receive an additional $292,000 in CARES Act dollars for the year, which will be helpful in our PPE requirements and anything we need that would support remote learning. And also, our funding levels from the state are kept consistent as what we were last year at the end of the year.
Okay.
So it was approximately a $515,000 reduction for us at this point in time for the entire year. So that's all I wanted to note to everyone, and can move along.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's move on to agenda item 7, the superintendent's report.
Thank you. The first report is going to be our return to school options. And our second report will be brought to you by Mr. Lacey regarding an update on the Willit project. So basically with our return to school options, we released a video via YouTube last Tuesday, which shared information for parents on where we were. There is no final decision as far as the start of school. If I can summarize it real simple, I saw a local pediatrician on a local weekend morning show, and he had said, gets a lot of questions about the start of school, and he tells everybody, ask me the week before school, and I'll be able to tell you what's going to happen when the opening of school happens. So with that in mind, we're not obviously waiting to that point, but it is clear to us that if 6-foot social distancing is a requirement for the opening of school, students will not be attending 5 full days. That's clear. And that is a mandate. It's not something that we're electing to do or choosing to do. We cannot house 4,800 students in the Warren City schools and maintain 6-foot social distancing. That's a reality. As with many of the districts, now districts that have 300 students, 450 students, 600 students, they may be able to make that happen. But a district our size, with the facilities that we are blessed to have under normal conditions, it just isn't the case. Another thing that we shared openly with families is we are not choosing to go to an all online option. I personally, and Mr. Smith put it very well in the Tribune, I don't believe that's a good approach to say for all students. That doesn't reach all learners, doing an online option. That was our only option in March. If that becomes our only option, that will be our option, but it's not going to be a choose on our part option. So at this point, if no conditions change for the better or for the worse, then students will be attending school 2 days a week, Monday and Tuesday, or Thursday and Friday. And they'll have remote learning options. We have secured technology for every student in the district. So again, if it's kindergarten and first grade, we're looking at iPads. We're looking at computers for students in grades 2 through 12. We can provide internet hotspots for any family that legitimately has connectivity issues. Again, if you have broadband in your home, that is much better than a hotspot. The connectivity, the timing, the speed, everything. So we plan on putting information out to families later this week or the beginning of next week. We're going to ask families to let us know if they want online learning or if they plan on sending their child to school. Parents are going to have 1 week in order to determine if they want online learning so that we can properly arrange and coordinate these efforts. If families are in need of transportation, we are also going to have that facilitated in the message to families that's going to be sent out via the U.S. mail, that if they require transportation, and a lot of districts are encouraging families to not use transportation. We're happy to transport any student that needs transportation, again, with the guidelines that we have set in place for transportation. But we are going to ask families to chime in with us and tell us, commit that they're about these transportation, so we can properly route with the best social distancing guidelines that's allowable for transportation. So again, we're not saying that our option 5 weeks from now will be a 2-day format, but if we were opening school next week, that's what it would be, given our health condition. This is consistent with guidance from the local health departments and health officials in the city as well as in the county, and it's consistent with the decisions that are made elsewhere.
What is that noise? Do any of the board members have any questions regarding this?
I did. I had a question. When you talk about the transportation requirement guidelines, what are they?
They have not been released. So this time we have zero transportation to Warren City Schools because we have not been given permission to put buses on the streets because there has been no firm guidelines provided.
Okay.
So I hate to tell you what I think they will be.
Yeah.
We're preparing for one scenario. We're starting to prepare for a second scenario. But that's what we've been doing since late spring. We've been preparing for any contingency that happens. So we've been provided no guidelines on transportation.
Okay. Okay. So we're waiting to hear from the governor on that?
We're waiting to hear from the Department of Education and any other entity that chimes in and has control over that. If it's the State Highway Patrol, Ohio Department of Education, as far as transporting students. So I don't believe that that'll come directly from the governor, but it'll come from an authority.
Okay. Thank
and
you.
From the Ohio Department of Health down to the local health departments.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Another thing I want to mention is that school start times are going to change a little bit. Students attending Warren G. Harding can expect to have here in the next week or two to have a start time that's about 20 minutes earlier. Might be 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 15 minutes as far as the tardy bell. Last year the tardy bell was 8 o'clock. We anticipate it to be somewhere between 7:35 and 7:40. What this will allow is for the cleaning of buses in between.
Okay.
And some other things that we have in place. We're hoping, by doing this, that this will keep Jefferson and McGuffey at the same times.
Okay.
And then Willard not Jefferson and McGuffey, Lincoln and McGuffey. I'm sorry. And then that'll keep our two southern schools, Willard and Jefferson. That'll keep Willard and Jefferson in a scenario where they may be 15 to 20 minutes later as far as starting the day and ending the day. And that, again, allows for the right pieces of transportation under the suspected guidelines coming down that we could do so. Again, nothing has been formally released, but again, I communicated to parents that this would be a good time to get their child familiar with wearing a facial covering. We will have mandated facial coverings for some population of students in the district.
Absolutely.
We have mandated facial coverings for scenarios such as transportation.
Mhm.
These specifics will be released in the next week or so.
Okay.
We are waiting for further guidance. Again, we hear things are going to come out from the governor or from the Ohio Department of Health later this week. We thought today was going to be an announcement, possibly tomorrow, possibly Thursday, and seeing where our county is along the way. But again, I also want to advise the board that there's no direct correlation between the county and their status as being whatever the color or tier rating is and the opening of schools. Schools open completely independent of that guidance, and a color on the county chart does not necessarily mean something will happen with the schools. However, there's maybe an indirect correlation. So if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Again, we do not have concrete answers. We're prepared, again, to say, school open tomorrow, school open next week, this is what it would be. But we can't even try to imagine where we're going to be a month or 5 weeks from now.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Is there a trigger for full remote? Besides being instructed by the governor, being declared red or purple?
Well, even if we were declared red or purple, that would not trigger an automatic full remote option. I would say that if Trumbull County was in a purple status, that would lead me to surely consider that as a very reasonable option. But purple does not trigger the schools, and that was made clear to us by our health officials last week when we had our weekly call with them.
Okay.
Also, I think that, again, if we're shut down, then that would lead towards more of those decisions.
Your last 6 words disappeared.
If we were shut down as a county or as a state, that would definitely lead us more
Okay.
to a full online remote status.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
Sure.
So in a nutshell, we have to be prepared for anything.
And
Yes.
we are preparing. And additionally, on the agenda this evening, I'm asking the board to amend the school calendar where instead of having 2 in-service days at the beginning of the year, we're asking for 5 so that our teachers can focus on remote and online learning options, not just for students who will be not in their buildings, potentially under an AB schedule for the other 3 days, but also to work with those students that choose the full online option.
Okay,
Makes sense.
okay.
I do have one
So
question.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Have we had any decision or direction as far as fall sports?
No, there's been no guidance from OHSAA or governor's office regarding fall sports. The latest, and Mr. Nicholson can chime in under athletic report, but the latest and greatest that I understand when it comes to athletics is that it's a local school district's decision if they choose not to participate in fall sports. But there's been nothing further. It is move on as planned with full practice starting around, I think, August 1st.
Thank you.
Sure.
Steve,
Yes.
I thought I heard you correctly. Please correct me. You said the parents will have an option of full remote, full online, or online and school.
Parents will have an option if they do not want to send their child to school, that they can choose a full online or remote option. We're going to communicate to them in writing. Families will have 1 week for which to commit to that program. And I'm saying use the words deliberately. Commit. You have to commit at this time that this is what you want. And you're going to commit that you're going to do that for the first semester.
Okay,
So families that are insisting that this is what they want, they will have that option. But it's not going to be an option for 2 weeks and I want to change it, or all of a sudden it's August or September and I want to go online. We are requiring families to commit to which they choose at this time, because we have to align staffing. We have to put plans in place, and we're prepared. We prepared multiple schedules and scenarios. That's why we're very comfortable with whatever comes down, because we put the time, effort, and legwork into this in the month of May when we were preparing what school could look like. So in any of these options, we feel like we're pretty ready to go. Need a little more professional development. We need to know who the kids are that would take advantage of these experiences. We feel pretty good about
okay, okay. Very good. Thank you, Steve.
it. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else have any other questions? Okay, so you can move on to your next item.
Okay, Mr. Lacy, if you can give us an update on the Willit project, please.
Sure. So far, if you go by, you'll actually on the north side of the building facing the playground, you can see where they've started to tear off some roof, and they're doing framing of the new dormer, the louvers. Those are kind of the big vent looking things. Those will be coming in the next week. And so we started to take a look at what was under the existing shingles. And so they've, there was some rust on those, but I guess nothing that was unexpected. I think it will be an ongoing issue as we tear off roof, what the metal decking and wood decking looks like underneath. Just kind of, for example, when you have shingles on your house and they tear off, they have to replace any water damage boards and all those fun things. So that'll be very similar. BOK has already been out to the site to take a look at the different issues they might have to deal with, just from a logistics issue in coordination with Adolph Johnson. We have also today there was also bricklayers out there for the brickwork that's going to be done on the current project. So everything's going as planned. Philip Sakanik's done a nice job in keeping us communicated very well. And we'll have another face-to-face meeting with the construction team this next Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, and we'll see where we are then. But so far, so good.
Okay.
Any questions?
Yeah, does anyone have any questions? Are they like running on time? Do they feel that they'll get it done?
Everybody is optimistic.
Okay. Well, in roofing, I guess that's the best you can ask.
Yeah.
We just went through it at our
Mother,
home,
yeah.
so I know.
Mother Nature plays a role in that too. So.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Okay, well, thank you. Anything else, Mr. Shiro? No? Okay. We'll move on to agenda item 8, which is the Board of Education committee reports. Under athletics, Mr. Nicholson, do you have any updates for us?
I do. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to start off with Executive Director Jerry Snodgrass of the OHSAA. I'm sure if you've been watching the news or the papers recently, Jerry had to resign a couple weeks ago. And from what I'm hearing, it wasn't voluntary. Bob Goldring is the interim executive director, replacing Jerry. And one of the first things that Bob came up with and announced, as you heard Mr. Shiro state earlier, Bob said that he's going to leave it in the hands of the local school districts to determine if they want to participate in the upcoming fall sports season. So he's kind of left it in our hands as of right now. So as of right now, our coaches are planning and, they're practicing as if the season's going to, start on time. The official start of fall practice is August 1. So our coaches are preparing as if they're our season. As Steve was saying with what his downtown administration is doing with curriculum and how the students will have school this year, we've come up with a few options too, being proactive to try to figure out, if they do this, if they do that, we've got plans. So, we haven't been sitting around here just waiting, but, and Mr. Walker asked about, are we going to have it? Once again, we have not heard a lot from the OHSAA. We're still waiting. And I know it sounds frustrating, but we're not sure, the last thing I heard was spectator wise, stadiums cannot have more than 50% capacity, what they hold, up to a maximum of 2,500 spectators. So there are some guidelines that have come out, but they're not set in stone. And once again, just like, Mr. Shiro's, waiting on busing information and all the other stuff to run a school district, we're in limbo right now, waiting on some final guidelines from the OHSAA/governor. So that's where we're at, sports wise. We're assuming they're still on as of today. The other thing we wanted to talk about was, skills and conditioning. We've talked about this in Athletic Council. Our coaches are in full face masks throughout the entire practice as soon as the first child arrives and as soon as the last child leaves. So we are still practicing, safe practices to ensure the safety of our student athletes. Football Coaches Association just received an email before coming on tonight. The High School Football Coaches Association put together a pretty interesting proposal to the state on how they would see things being done on a Friday evening. It's about a 38-page document, and I was reading it, and it's pretty interesting that they've gotten their, the Football Coaches Association is, really trying to tell the state, they want to play football. And here's what we're going to do, as a group. make, Friday evening safe and that we can experience them. So that's something I'm going to forward to Mr. Shiro probably in the next 10 minutes. So I know that the coaches group have gotten together and they put together a plan, and it's a pretty good plan. It's extensive, but like I said, there's so many variables that can impact it. But, I think if you look at this proposal that they put on how they envision a Friday night, coming to the game on the bus, locker room situations, field situations, after post-game situations, they put a lot of time and energy in it. It's very well written. So I know they're advocating as much as they can to try to ensure that we do have a fall football season, not only fall football season, but an entire fall sports season. So I don't know if there's any questions or anything. That's basically all I have to report for tonight.
It sounds like spectators will be limited to what's closer to 25% of our capacity. Is that correct?
That would be 25%. We hold about 10,000, right? So that came out about 3-4 weeks ago, Mr. Walker. So it's subject to change, but we've had discussions that if does that 2,500 include the teams, the bands, or if it doesn't. So what we're going to have to do, especially in a big game like Camp McKinley game 1, if that's what the number is going to be, we've got to look at how many tickets to the parents of the student athletes get. We've got season ticket holders. We've got visiting team tickets to give to them. So it's going to be if it's a 2,500 and it stays at 2,500 the first game, it'll be a sellout. It'll be a sellout. So lots of variables to consider. We still, got to figure out concession wise. One of the things that the coaches put in their submittal to the state was they even talked about concessions. They're recommending everything's prepackaged, and I'm very impressed with this, and I'll share it with Mr. Shiro. And Steve, I don't know if you want me to forward it to anybody else before you see it.
Well,
okay, I'll send it to Mr. Shiro.
The reality is, go ahead and send it to me, because we had a call with Mr. May, our Warren City Health Commissioner, a number of members of our leadership team today. And we did discuss, for example, the 2,500 capacity. Well, figure this, is it 2,500 tickets for patrons to attend a game? Or from that 2,500, do you take 200 kids from the Harding band, 200 kids from the Canton McKinley band? Who do you take into account? Are you sitting there with 1,700 tickets at the end of the day? At that point, go to go pre-sale and push the pre-sale, because it's going to be a very challenging experience for a game like that. We will definitely have more than 1,000, 1,500 patrons at the game. So we asked for clarification to be drawn out in that. So Bill, go ahead and forward that to me, because to me it sounds like some good homework, some good work. It sounds like a wish list, but at the end of the day, whatever is in those documents has to be with the blessing of the local health officials.
Sure.
Right. And I guess, my question with that, Bill and Steve, is, ultimately that 2,500 number came from OHSAA. How in line are they with the health department? Because they couldn't even give you an answer as to, does this include football team? Does it include band members? And that needs, like you said, that needs to be determined.
And ultimately, Patty, you're correct. OHSAA can put out a number, but ultimately that is interpreted by the local health official. Get their guidance. They're not going to go to OHSAA. They're going to go to the Ohio Department of Health to get their
right.
So whatever the Ohio Department of Health and the local health officials determine 2,500 looks like, that's what 2,500 is, regardless of what OHSAA intended. We don't report to OHSAA when it comes to this. That's great guidance, but we do report to our local and county health officials.
Right.
And I have a question. So even if we were to be able to have a game, are you still going to have to follow the mandates of temperature testing, temperature taking, and and mask wearing and whatever else?
That's a
Go ahead,
very,
Steve.
that's a very good question. And I'd like to answer that. There is no mandate for temperature taking.
Okay,
We're electing to do that in our plans for reopening.
okay.
But nowhere where the state and all the health officials talk about temperature taking, that's to take place at home by the families. That's to take place before you leave your house to go out in society. We're electing to do that because we want to have a stronger handle on the greater health and well-being in our school environments. So we're taking that as an extra step. When it comes to mask wearing, I think that we need to wait it out and see how things pan out locally. You know, Youngstown just adopted a mask requirement. You know, is Warren, it is the state by any means. So I think we need to wait and see, because we have over a month, about 5 weeks before our first game, and see what transpires between now and then.
Okay.
But we are prepared, and we have the authority to mandate whichever we choose at our event.
Okay. Okay.
Very good.
Mhm.
All right, does anyone else have any other questions?
I have a question for Bill.
Yes.
So we have a contract to live stream home games through a service?
No, that's something that we could possibly do. Our WSCN has live stream games, I believe, on YouTube.
Yeah.
So it's for a contract. There's no contract out there.
Do we have the ability to live stream the games then?
Yeah, we
For a
have.
fee?
Yeah, I believe that, that's probably a lot of schools are, they were talking about at one time, if we weren't allowed to have spectators whatsoever, the possibility of live streaming games and charging X amount of dollars to view the game, was a way of generating some revenue and has been discussed by other school districts. So like I said, I think, once we get further guidance from OHSA and, the health boards and everything, then, that could be a possibility, John.
Well, I think it's a great idea to live stream the game, pay per view, and avoid the problems of having 1,800 people in the stadium trying to social distance, perhaps wearing masks, and so forth and so on. That's a lot of crowd control under what I can only characterize as a pretty extreme condition.
And I concur with you. Like I said, we've had many discussions among the local athletic directors and the concerns that come with, are we going to be crowd controlling with every mask, et cetera? But as we approach the season, we'll look at, how do we live stream these and charge a fee? I can get a hold of Maslin because I know Maslin does it. And I think they charge about $15 a pop.
Oh no, it's only $5.
Is that all it was?
It was $5 when I watched the Maslin game.
Okay. I knew it had a 5 in it. We do it. We're going 10.
They may have raised the price, but this was, 2 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, this is definitely, an alternative solution to, people to watch the games perhaps. So, we'll wait and see what the guidelines are and see how manageable they are. And then, we'll sit down as a group and, make a decision on how we want to do some things.
Okay. Thank you.
But I do agree that should be an option.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
All right, let's move on to the finance advisory. I'm sure there's no report,
None.
right? And no meeting scheduled for anytime soon. So, but that's always out there when we get back to normal, I'll say. Board policies and guidelines.
No information.
Legislative, I don't have anything other than, waiting to see additional guidance from the governor's office.
Yeah, I don't have anything.
Regarding our numbers and that. So, TCTC, Mr. Faulkner, anything? We can't hear you.
You're muted, Mr. Faulkner.
He's muted.
Oh yeah, you're muted.
Am I unmuted now?
There you go. Okay.
Okay. No, I said, you know, as always, we have to kind of see what everybody's doing and trying to line up with, you know, what's going on. But that's kind of what we're waiting on. There's still a good number of students, as you know, from all of our school districts, you know, want to attend there. Hopefully that'll still happen. And, you know, Warren, we still have that large contingent of students that'll be there.
Okay.
One of the things that TCTC is doing is that they're going to start talking to students, you know, earlier in the middle school, rather than, you know, we always had the 10th grade students to come and that kind of stuff. They're going to start having some contacts earlier so students can start deciding if this might be an option for them. So there's some plans for that. And I think that'll work well too.
Okay, that's very good. All right, thank you. Do we have anything under old business? And is there anything under new business?
I have something under new business.
Okay, go ahead.
Did you guys get that, the Emily Doherty email concerning create a mascot change?
Yes.
Okay, so we need to have some discussion on that or at a later date or no? What?
Well, I mean, I think that, you know, we have, as a school district, have always had that at the forefront. As when we were building the new schools, you know, we moved to more of using the block W. And, you know, in our representation, I know that, you know, given the current cultural climate, it's definitely, you know, a subject that is out there.
Yes.
That was one letter I know that we received. I think that any conversation that we have about it needs to be a community conversation. And I mean our community, the greater Warren community. I think it needs to be meaningful. I don't think this is anything that we should take lightly.
I agree.
And I think that we should dedicate time to it. That being said, where we are at right now with the pandemic and the health issues and crisis that we're facing, my personal opinion is that that is our priority. How do we ensure that our students are being safely educated, that they're receiving the academic instruction that they need, that families are feeling safe and comfortable with that? So I think that's, you know, our number one priority. So, you know, I think that we have a conversation, but I'm not sure that now is necessarily the right time. If any of you have anything, you know, else that you would like to, you know, to add to that, you're more than welcome to.
I would.
That's just my opinion, not as your board president, but just as a board member. Okay.
I have an opinion.
Go ahead.
No, I think that this is certainly a conversation that's noteworthy that we need to have. And I realize that we have all these other issues going on. I just don't want this to be kind of, you know, swept under the rug and, you know, we just continue to let this go. This is something that I think we need to put on a priority and deal with this, because there's just some things that we need to discuss. And I agree. I know with the pandemic and all the other things, but sometimes these things, you know, they get kind of pushed under. And now is the time, you know, the whole country, these issues. And I think it's something we need to take on. And, you know, maybe right now is not the time for the discussion, but I do have some opinions and a lot of things that we can talk about, you know, when the time comes.
Yeah.
Hello?
Anyone else?
I also agree that this is something that we do need to take into consideration and be respectful and mindful.
Right.
And definitely inclusive of the entire Warren community, as you said, Patty. Understanding that education is our first priority right now with the pandemic going on. We do want to we don't want to take away from the resources and the time and the effort and the energy we're giving towards that. But as soon as the opportunity presents itself, I believe this is something that we should carefully and mindfully take up and consider.
I just don't want everybody to start blaming everything on pandemic, like, okay, well, we can't, the pandemic, well, I'm sure that's going to pass. But, these issues, I think, are something we need to keep at the forefront, because everything now, any conversation you bring up is all well with the pandemic. Well, we're going to have a whole laundry list of things to deal with after the pandemic. I just don't want to make sure that we are mindful of that, and these things need to be addressed.
Well, Mr. Faulkner, you are the longest standing board member on the screen right now.
I sure am.
And you know full well that when something is brought up under new business, that brings it to the table officially.
Right. That's right.
So that should give you some comfort in that, that on this date, on July 21st of 2020, that Miss Regina Patterson brought this to the school board's attention. So it's not something that's going to be swept under the rug. Okay?
I agree.
So Mr. Fowley, do you have anything that you would like to add? And you're on mute.
Well, I'm now unmute because the lawn tractor has moved away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was out of respect to everyone who's listening. Well, I suppose what I think is that the school board never made the decision on the mascot. This is a decision that's been made 3 times by students.
Correct.
And when you talk about including the community, I would say that the community that most needs included in this are our current students. And I'm not quite sure how you deal with that when they may be attending school 2 days a week or remotely. And I would not want to miss their input under any circumstances.
I agree. And that's where I was going with, as far as us making sure that we have a meaningful conversation and input about this. Just an example, in Columbus, there is a college there that just recently changed their mascot. It was not Native American driven in any way. It was a 15-month process with their board of trustees. When that process was over, they passed a resolution to say, yes, we are going to change our name, our mascot, but there was no timetable attached to it. So once again, this is something that, I don't believe can happen overnight if we want to be respectful of the opinions of everyone in our community. And once again, this was not the board, Mr. Fowley's correct. This was not the Board of Education deciding that, oh, this is what the mascot will be. The student body was very involved in it. So very good point to bring up.
I agree.
I have another comment, Patty.
Yes.
Would you think that it was appropriate that you answer Miss Doherty, to let her know that all of the conversation that we just had, that is not that we are ignoring her, but there's we need to have so that we could be able to discuss this conversation even with students.
Yes.
If you could answer her, would that be appropriate?
Most certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that is under new business, and as we said, it is now officially recognized, and we will have further discussion at a later date.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. No, thank you. Now we'll move on to the agenda itself, and under treasurer's recommendations on page 3, item 1, Mr. Fowley, please.
Treasurer's recommendations. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding the June 2020 and July 2020 board minutes be approved as submitted.
I'd second.
Okay, call the roll, please.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Faulkner,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 4, item 2, Mr. Faulkner, please.
Monthly financial statement is recommended. The resolution listed below regarding the June 2020 financial statement and short-term investments made by the treasurer during June 2020, and that's exhibit 2627, be approved as submitted.
I second.
Okay, does anyone have any questions? Call the roll, please.
Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
yes,
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 6, item 3, Mr. Walker, please.
Yes. Sorry, I'm to page behind.
Page 6,
Transfer.
item 3.
Transfer of funds. It is recommended the resolution listed below for the transfer of funds be approved as submitted.
second,
Okay, any questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
yes,
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 7, item 4, Mrs. Patterson, please.
the appropriation budget. It is recommended the resolution listed below to approve appropriation budget A be approved as submitted.
Do I have a
Second.
second? Do we have a second?
I second.
Second.
Faulkner.
Thank you. Any questions? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes,
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. All right, and on page 9, item 2, Mr. Walker, please.
COVID-19 staff testing. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding the Warren City Schools COVID-19 testing for staff for the 2020-2021 school year be approved as submitted.
second,
Thank you. Okay, call the roll, please.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
yes,
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 10, item 3, Mr. Fowley, please.
Remote learning plan. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding the Warren City Schools remote learning plan for 2020 through 2021 school year be approved as submitted.
Second.
I second. Okay,
Okay, call the roll, please.
can I have a question?
Oh, you do, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Shiro, can you explain this a little bit better for us? I read it, but I didn't quite understand what was going on.
I would defer to Mrs. Hartzell. Ms. Toy and Mrs. Hartzell were the ones who wrote the plan, consistent with the template created with our colleagues at Trumbull County Educational Service Center. So Mrs. Hartzell, I defer to you, please.
Sure. Mrs. Patterson, basically that plan, there were sections on there that we had to fill in information. And basically, if we were to go into a position where we were fully remote, where the students were not permitted to be in the school, we had to have a plan of how we would service them and how we would make sure that learning was happening and that we were monitoring student progress.
Okay, so does the, what's that, the Mahoney, what is it, the Mahoney Valley High School? Will they be the ones that will oversee this? How did that work?
Mahoney Valley High School, we are not participating in.
Okay.
That was a template that was put out by the OEC. And we really, all they did is gave us guidance as to making sure that we covered the 6 guiding principles.
Okay. So that we're the ones that are really you guys are the ones that are really overseeing this whole thing. Am I correct?
Correct. We're following the guidance that has been given to us of things that we need to consider and how we're going to make sure that those things are being implemented and monitored.
Thank you. I didn't understand it and I needed to have a little bit clarification. Thank you so much. Okay. I'm good.
Patty, another question for Mrs. Hartzell. So the plan for the whole district to be remote, is that the plan which will be used for the families who choose remote learning?
2 different things. The families that
Okay.
choose remote learning, they're choosing to opt their children not physically coming into the buildings. The remote learning plan that you saw a copy of is the plan that if we were in the same situation that we were in during grading period 4, where we have been mandated that schools basically are shut down, but we need to continue learning, that is the plan that we had to have in place.
Okay, so the plans are different. That answers my question.
Okay, anyone else?
I do just have one question. And you may not know, I'm not sure. Just, and I did read the plan like Ms. Patterson, but are there any significant changes if the board that we know of as of now? If the school district had to go completely remote, are there any significant changes for the coming school year as opposed to what was done this past spring?
I can answer that. Yes, there are, but we're not able to discuss those specifics at that time because now we're not talking about a plan. We're talking about actual delivery of instruction on a consistent basis. Gotcha. And without our faculty being brought in, without our principals being brought in to be introduced to it, have opinion, and to collaborate with them, I don't think it would be appropriate to be discussing things, especially that would be so fluid at this time. Gotcha. But what we can do is we can provide you information as we are more solid on what those plans would look like. I just think it's out of fairness for all the stakeholders, organizationally speaking.
That makes sense. And it's still, like we said, it's early. Things are changing quick in education in Ohio right now. Thank you.
And I also wanted to point out that, districts, if they went blended learning, if they went remote learning, these plans need to be put together. They need to be in place. They need, some of them need adopted by the board, others may not, and they need uploaded to the Ohio Department of Education. So a part of it is having a meeting compliance that's necessary to meet requirements. And that's often different than what day-to-day work and instruction looks like. That's kind of the grunt and the nuts and the bolts of what we're doing. A plan is simply a roadmap, a template. But if you don't follow the right paths, it may never get you there.
Okay, does anyone have any other questions regarding the remote learning plan? Okay, did we have a second?
Second.
Yes. We had one.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, you read it, Mr. Fowley. All right, please call the roll.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 11, item 4, Mr. Faulkner, please.
Yes, the 2020-21 school calendar for teachers and students. This is amendment. It is recommended a resolution listed below to amend the 2020-21 school calendar approved at the regular board meeting that was in November 2019, and that it be approved as submitted.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
All the changes are listed as we can see below.
All right, call the roll, please.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes?
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 12, item 5, Mr. Walker, please.
One day I'm going to turn my page early so you don't have to wait on me.
That's okay.
Recognition of quotes for the PK through 8 photographs for the 2020-21 school year. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding the quote for the PK through 8 photographs for the 2020-21 school year be approved as submitted.
A second.
Okay, any questions about this?
Is this the same company we've used for a while, or is this a different one?
I believe this is, but I'm not sure. This
Okay.
is handled through the business office, and I'm not a part of the specifics of the bid process.
Okay.
I could get that
Bob.
information.
This is the company which was used last year.
Yeah, they've been pretty good. I think reasonable and all from what I haven't heard any complaints. So I was wondering if it's the same one. Okay. Pretty reasonable prices.
Okay, call the roll, please.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes?
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. On to page 13, item 6, Mr. Fowley, please.
Awarding the contract for PK through 8 photographs for the 2020-2021 school year. It is recommended the resolution listed below, awarding the contract for the PK through 8 photographs for the 2020-2021 school year be approved as submitted.
Second.
Okay, any questions about this? Please call the roll.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes?
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 14, item 7, Mrs. Patterson, please.
Payment in lieu of providing transportation for non-public school students. It is recommended the resolution listed below approving payment in lieu of providing transportation for non-public school students transportation to and from school for the 2019-20 year be approved as submitted. Is that right? Is that right to say 2019-2020, or should that say 2020-2021?
The resolution is correct as submitted.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any other questions? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes?
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 15, item 8, Mr. Faulkner, please.
Yes. Tuition reimbursement is recommended the resolution listed below for tuition reimbursement be approved as submitted, and those names are listed there. Congratulations and continue on.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Please call the roll.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes?
Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. Now on page 16, item 9, Mr. Walker, please.
Personnel recommendations. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding personnel items A through J be approved as submitted.
And that takes you to page 23.
I second.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions about anything? If not, please call the roll.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. We have nothing under board recommendations. As far as public participation, there was one additional email from a parent, again, very eloquently written. She's also a nurse, so I have responded back to everyone that had emailed us earlier as well, and directed them to the earlier discussion that we had at our last board meeting for them to view. And many of them wrote back and thanked us for that as well. So there was nothing new there. We have no need for executive session. So at this time, I would ask for a motion to adjourn. Go ahead.
I do have one question. I
Yes.
think I missed something on page 8 under the superintendent's recommendations. It had to do with the Mahoning County High School Governing Board. And it was a contract between us and them. And that's where my question really came in, is what service are we providing? Are they providing to us? It's between us and the Mahoning County High School Governing Board.
We have students that attend and get their education outside of the district for various reasons, possibly court foster placement, and we have to pay a tuition rate to different educational institutions. Mahoning County High School is one of those.
Thank you. Thank you. See, that was the, and I apologize.
So that's where you were.
But that's
coming
where
up.
I was
Okay.
going. Thank you.
Okay.
No problem.
All right. Is there anything else?
Did we act upon page
Okay, we
8?
did. Nope. I don't think we did.
Don't
Yes,
think
we did.
We did.
We did.
Who was it?
I don't have-
Regina read it, Mr. Faulkner seconded it, and everyone voted yes.
Yeah,
I think it was on 2,
What's
the
that?
COVID that Regina read.
No, I have it right here. I've
Okay.
kept track of all of them.
What I would recommend would be, we can go back in the archive, and if we did it or if we didn't do it by page omission, then we could always make a correction at the next meeting if these weren't acted upon. But again, that's my
Yeah,
recommendation.
I've kept track the entire time, and I have that down. So
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, wait, we have to.
okay, so is there anything else?
One thing I would like to add, Mrs. Lamperos, prior
Yes.
to the meeting, if our next meeting is via Zoom, as this one is, the board, or as you as board president, would want to figure out the format for having a secure executive session. We've not had executive session while we've been on Zoom, but I would recommend that in the near future we do, if there is a need.
Okay. Is that something that we need to do this evening?
No.
Okay.
No, but there's always pending human resource matters and items that
Right.
need to be discussed, to that level. So I would just, if we're going to continue into Zoom, that the board finds a format for which to conduct the business and executive session in a secure fashion that makes the board comfortable.
Yes, that's fine. I know that there are ways to enter into a private room to do that. So, yeah, and before we close.
Say that again? What happened? I missed part of that conversation. What? I was trying to follow.
He is, okay, 1 second, Bob. He's requesting that at our next meeting, that if we are via Zoom rather than at the board, that we get the technology available to go into executive session via Zoom. That there will be a need to do that, okay? All right. Okay, if there isn't anything else.
Patty, one last question.
Yeah.
For Mr. Cairo. Do you believe that conducting the executive session through the phone system is secure?
It all depends on the system. All depends on the system being used.
I know there's a concern about being hacked even in a private Zoom room.
Correct.
But,
and that's why I posted.
however, other boards have been doing it. We had opted, not to, because we were able to socially distance. Of course, we're no longer in the red, but we were coming into this meeting, which is why, I felt that it was important that we, hold the meeting this way. So yeah, I mean, whatever you want to talk with Frank and figure it out, how we'll need to do it. But we will make sure that happens. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. You're welcome.
And I'm glad we did it this way this time because I'm quarantined.
Yeah.
So I would have been able to
listen. I did not want to violate HIPAA and out you.
So
thanks for quarantining responsibly.
Exactly. Yes. Miss Regina, this is why we love you.
Yeah. See, so I'm glad we did it this way this time.
Yeah. I think so.
Had to miss.
Yeah.
Well, everybody stay healthy, stay well.
All right. I just need a motion
Bob.
to
Thank
adjourn.
you.
I so moved.
Okay, Mr. Walker moved. Do I have a second?
Faulkner,
Second.
Okay, call the roll, please.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Lamperos.
Yes, the motion carries. The time is 7:11. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you for joining us via Zoom. And be safe, stay healthy, wash your hands, wear a mask, do all the right things.
That's right. Be responsible.
Thank you.
Thank you.